Not everybody can be a manager or should be a manager. You can be an individual contributor and you can still be a good asset to the organization.
Today, we're going to be talking about your first year as a manager. What are the skills, according to you, that one needs in their first year as a manager?
3 skills I'd point out. The first is big picture thinking. The second thing is communication. Third thing which I want you to say is...
Dr. Pavan Soni is an innovation evangelist and best-selling author of Design Your Thinking and Design Your Career. In this conversation, Dr. Soni shares practical strategies to help first-time managers survive and thrive in their toughest first year. What is one of the biggest shocks that you get after you become a manager?
The first thing is that they find it very uncomfortable because the people whom they have been working with, suddenly they need to be reporting into. And that's where things like starts off.
I want to now talk about the more common pitfalls. How do I prevent that?
One of the pitfalls that people often fall for as a new manager is an open door policy. And I think this is suicidal.
That's an interesting one.
Because the moment you have a door open, people would not solve their problems at their own level. They'll always walk up to you with their problems. So that's the first thing. The second thing is...
So today we're going to be talking about your first year as a manager. Now, let's say I got promoted. I'm really happy, excited, exuberant. I've finally got that promotion I've been waiting for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Now, once the exuberance and the excitement dies down and reality starts kicking in, there could be some initial shocks as well.
Yeah.
So what is one of the biggest shocks that you get after you become a manager, you're managing a team or a project?
The first thing one needs to understand is that not everybody can be a manager or should be a manager. There are a lot of people who excel as an individual contributor. And what happens, the first thing is that when they become a manager, they find it very uncomfortable because the people whom they have been working with, suddenly they need to be reporting into. And also the work that they've been doing all their life, they need to be delegating. And that's where things like micromanagement starts off. Things like, I can do it, so why should somebody else do it? And if I don't do it, what will I do with my excess time? And I believe that the Achilles heel of most people is delegation. So when they fail to delegate. So challenges with regards to how do I manage relationships, with regards to how do I delegate stuff? What do I do with my own career? And am I better off as an individual contributor vis-a-vis a manager, as one of the dilemmas that people typically face? And these come as shocks because everyone wants to be a manager in a country like India. But not everyone is a good manager. So in the bargain, I lose out on a fantastic engineer and I get a lousy manager. So people need to be very clear that the only way to move up is not being a manager. You can be an individual contributor and you can still be a good asset to the organization. But if you choose to be a manager, then you need to be having a trade-off between what I do and what others get to do.
I want to now talk about the more common pitfalls that, we see over and over again. And you started by talking about micromanaging.
Yeah.
How do I prevent that from happening?
So let me give you 3 simple tips on how to delegate. And these tips needs to start before you become a manager and not after you become a manager. Because even as an IC, you should start pushing things out of your plate so that you can create that room for you to think like your boss or like your boss's bosses. The first rule is called as direction is 80% casting.
Okay.
Now we are in the city of movies and every director, right from Steven Spielberg to who have you. Remember one thing, that the most critical role of a director is casting. If I got the cast right, the guy knows his role. Imagine Heath Ledger as Dark Knight's Joker. That's about it. Having picked Heath Ledger as a Joker in Dark Knight was the most important decision that Nolan did.
It's more than half the job done.
Right? So casting is the most critical thing, which means they're getting the right person for the right role. As Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, says that the most critical thing is to get the right people on the bus and wrong people off the bus and right people on the right seat before you start the bus. So that's the first thing. The second thing is take your hands off your people. When you are not taking the hands off your people, you're not allowing them to fail. And if they don't fail, they don't learn. Imagine you're teaching your daughter how to cycle. Till the time you don't take your hands off, she'll never get the balance on the cycle. Will she fall? She will fall. But that's how she learns cycling. You can never tell your daughter that if you fall, I'll not buy your cycle again. She will fall. Take your hands off, but never take your eyes off. Keep an eye riveted on the person. Because if you take your eyes off the person, he thinks or she thinks it's not important enough. So get the right people in the bus on the right seat. Take your hands off, but never take your eyes off. The second rule. And third rule is always show progress.
Okay.
Often what happens is when an employee works in an organization, he or she is working in a black box. She does not know how my contribution is moving the needle. They are spending 8, 9, 10 hours a day, often on the weekends as well. But if I do not see that how my 8 hours, which I'm squeezing out of my family and my own life and of my future, is going to help the organization, let alone the larger society. So as a manager, I must know and I must show that, hey, this was your contribution last week. And look, this is what we achieved. So if I can relay and communicate how your contribution impacts a larger objective, and to, of course, have an objective at the first place. And I need not be a manager to do that. That's the whole point. I'm talking about horizontal leadership, not vertical leadership. I can start delegating my work even to people around me, people below me who are not logically reporting into me. And this is a great skill. getting work off your table so that you can look at the higher objectives. It's a great skill. And suddenly you realize that the promotion that you are being for is natural. You don't have to really jostle your way into that promotion. So don't wait for people to report into your family to be a leader is the key message.
But hey, I'm a new manager. Like when delegation happens, I'm bound to make mistakes. There will be some, pushback. There could be anything that could go wrong while delegating.
Yeah.
How can I prevent that? Because again, somebody who's new in a role will struggle a bit, at least for a few months.
Exactly. So let us go back to the time-tested urgency importance matrix. If I look at the urgency importance matrix, visualize this matrix in your head. There is urgency which could be high or low, and there is importance which could be high or low. If something is really urgent and important, you don't delegate it. You don't delegate it. Like this podcast. You don't delegate it because it is important and it is urgent, which means it has to be done now. It has to be done by you and by me. We don't delegate this. And that's why you need perfection. But if something is not important and urgent, which means I need a coffee, right? That needing a coffee is not so make or break for the podcast, at least in the cosmic scheme of things, but it has to be done now. You delegate that. So any requirement in which you can suffer failure, you can tolerate failure, should be delegated. If you cannot tolerate failure, never delegate it.
But that fear of mistakes being made, failure, that is real. I mean, when I'm delegating something especially like which is very precious to me or maybe has been my pet project, and now as a manager, I have to loop in more people, have to involve them and give them some tasks. It is quite scary.
So what happens is you have to objectify the expectation. So for example, if I'm a manager and I ask my subordinate, make a presentation that I like. He's clueless. Versus when I say make a presentation with 3 slides and each slide having 3 points. What I've done, suddenly what I like has been converted into 3 slides and 3 points.
More objective.
So what happens with managers often where they fail is they are not able to translate their personal choices into objective statements. Because the person is always guessing as to what will this guy be happy about. So whatever job you took, wasn't it delegated to you at the first place? Think about that. Whatever manager you were or you became, it was somebody else's job that was landed onto you. Suddenly you make it so personal. You make it so much of your personality into it that it has to be done in a certain style. And suddenly when the guy is taking your job, he's clueless as to what your style is. So if you can make it a little bit more objective. So 2 things you need to do. First is objective. Make it more amicable to be measured instead of guessed. Number 1. Number 2, shield the failure. The extent to which it will fail and the impact of the failure should be contained by you. It cannot blow up the company. It cannot blow up the day for you. Please remember that. So when I'm delegating, I need to
be cautiously.
Exactly. And to contain it. I say that this is the box in which even if it blows up, this blow up happens inside this box. It doesn't impact the entire organization. So I'll give you a playing field, a test lab, a lab where you will experiment. And if you fail, I'll take the ownership if you fail.
I want to steer you in a different direction into a new segment called the First Tier Manager Toolkit. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions about creating a practical survival kit for first-time managers, kind of like a rapid fire. So, what's the one book that every new manager, according to you, should read?
Good to Great.
What's a simple daily habit that makes managing easier?
Journaling.
What's the most important question to ask your team regularly?
Do you have the skill and the will to carry out your job?
What's the one thing new managers should stop doing immediately?
Micromanaging.
And what's the best piece of advice for someone who's starting their first management role tomorrow?
Don't take it unless you're ready for it. 70%. Don't push yourself.
But what are the skills, according to you, that one needs in their first year as a manager? What can I do to equip myself? Because like I said, we've discussed this before, that I also come from zero experience of leading any teams. And I was one of them, and now I'm their manager. So what are the skills I need to cultivate, harness, or, learn from others?
3 skills I'd point out. The first is big picture thinking. What I mean by big picture thinking is that because, like, look at Mumbai. The higher I go in a building, the more expansive I can see. Which means I can't look down upon and see the cars because the cars start looking smaller and smaller and smaller. Same happens in organization. When I get promoted, I need to change my worldview. I'm not looking at the function. I'm looking at the organization. Secondly, I'm not looking at the organization. I'm looking at the industry. I'm not looking at the industry. Then I'm looking at the economy of India and then the geopolitical scape. While I was responsible to look at my division and my function as an HR, suddenly when I become the CEO, I need to look at the rupee-dollar ratios and look at the tariffs, which was none of my consideration so far. So the first thing that manager needs to develop as a skill is big picture thinking. The second thing is communication. I need to communicate very clearly my expectations from you. 3 slides, 3 points, period. I should not be saying that, surprise me, make me happy. And be very clear. So I was one day driving in Bangalore, and Bangalore has a cantonment, and I was driving past the cantonment, and I saw something very wonderfully written there. Okay, it was written very crisp. It was saying that defense land trespassers will be shot. I love the statement so much. Let me repeat the statement: defense land trespassers will be shot. Now there was no maybe, there was no however, there was no persecuted.
There was certainty.
There was certainty, clarity, and as a result, the fence was low. We didn't have barbed wire. When the guy knows that I will be shot, he doesn't
Chances
climb.
are you won't climb.
He won't climb the fence.
Mm.
What happens in Indian culture is that we are so sugarcoating that it loses the meaning. We say that, see, you might get shot. Right? So that's the second thing. Be clear in communication. Third thing which I want you to say is the importance of having courage. Courage is not absence of fear. Courage is acknowledgement of fear. When I say somebody is courageous, he is not foolish to dismiss fear, but he acknowledges that, yes, there is a risk. I may fail, but I'm ready for that failure.
So you're saying big picture, communication and courage.
Yeah.
Now, these three are the qualities you need in your first year as a manager, something you can cultivate, of course, and strengthen over the time. But coming back to communication, now, giving constructive feedback. Up until now, this new manager was the one at the receiving end of feedback. And now when you slightly, step into a managerial role, you also have to give constructive feedback. Now, how do you learn that skill?
The critical thing is we use a technique called SCQA for giving feedback. It's a very useful technique for the audience as well. SCQA is a technique that comes from McKinsey and Company. And this is about clear communication. The first thing that one needs to understand is that there is nothing personal in an organization. So what is critical is that the person who is getting into this ambit, he needs to first of all understand this very, very critical aspect that I need to be very clear in the communication and consistent in giving a feedback. Okay, so what is SCQA? Whenever I'm giving a feedback to a person, the first important thing is to relay to him the situation. That look, this is where the state of the affair is. We are a startup, we are funded by an investor, and we have 18 months of runway left with us. After 18 months, we have to shut the company down. That's the situation. Most people should be given a reality test that look, we're in the dire straits. Let's not be very fancy here. So the first thing called situation. Most people mask the situation. Ki nahi, kuch nahi hai, it's okay. Don't worry. No, you have to tell the situation very clearly. Trespassers will be shot. Okay, so that's S. Then comes C. C stands for complication. The complication is that the decision you took last month costed us so much dollar. And that's where you bring data. You don't say that I don't like your style. Or I don't think, it's not me, it's fact. We are not very factual in our communication standards. We are very hypothetical. Then comes Q. Q is question. What do you think should have been done better? And you take a pause there and you allow the other person to sink into that reality. And you allow him, and very important communication is to maintain eye contact. You have to look straight into the eye of the other person and communicate. Don't deflect your gaze. And then you give the answer that maybe there is a better way of doing it, that maybe I need to coach you. Maybe I need to give you more assistance. So don't sugarcoat it. Get them up to speed, because many a times people do not know the consequence of their mistakes.
Now let's also talk about managing up, because while yes, the new manager has been promoted, they will still have a boss.
Yeah.
So how does this person's relationship now shape up or change or evolve with their boss? Will there be any change
there? Very good question again. Communicating up and down the line of command is very critical. I'll give you a very good example of how to communicate up and down the line of command. I'll take you to the Kargil War of 1999. General Malik, who was the chief of army at that point of time, wrote a book on Kargil. And what he said in Kargil War is that the reason Kargil War happened is because of intelligence failure. Just 6 months before Kargil War, our Prime Minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, took a bus to Lahore to meet Nawaz Sharif. And within the next 6-7 months, there is Mr. Pervez Musharraf mounting Tiger Hills in Kargil. How is it possible? Either it means military failure or diplomatic failure or lack of intelligence. And what General Malik talks about very clearly is that the people at Raisina Hill, Delhi, where our defense ministry is, the power center of defense ministry is not Kargil. The power center is Delhi. Action is happening in Kargil. The senior ranks are sitting in Delhi. The people on the field of Kashmir Valley, they know insurgency is happening. But if they're not able to communicate upward and tell them that, sir, such and such thing is happening, I think we need more attention. They allow this thing to happen till it goes out of proportions. So after that, the people in the armed forces were trained and coached. So I think as a leader, we need to institutionalize this whole idea of upward communication. Otherwise, it's a catastrophe.
And what about managing/communication across? Because I'm not the only manager in the company. There will be several other team leads who could be at my level, slightly senior, slightly junior. So how should I sort of navigate that space?
Stakeholder management. As you move up in the organization, you need to realize that people have vested interest. A great idea in your head is only great idea in your head. Unless that great idea is made great in everybody else's head, the idea would not see the light of the day. And I'll give you a simple example of automation. Suppose I'm an IT manager and I want to automate certain functions. And I say that we'll automate these functions, but the HR head says that we'll lose people. And you said, no, what come, what, I don't care, man. So instead of bulldozing him, you have to pre-wire him and talk to him that, okay, what can we do to make you look good? What can we do to make you look good? Each of those people. So I need to ensure that my peers should also look good. I should not have stepping onto their toes. So horizontal communication and stakeholder management is very, very critical. And to ensure that my great idea is great in everybody else's head. As Kalam very rightly said, a good vision is one in which everyone can see their own vision. So I have to delegate downward and ensure that the people trust me. I have to communicate upward so that people above know that the steering is in the right hand.
We've talked about the do's, but let's talk about the don'ts, because what are those mistakes that I should steer clear of, especially when one is communicating with their senior managers or senior leadership as a new manager?
So in business, we say that a bad news should travel faster than a good news. And no surprise is a good surprise. Often what happens is that the naive managers who have just gotten into the game recently and wet behind the ears, they want to surprise the leaders by their outstanding performance. And that's the reason every quarter organizations go and declare that this quarter we made this and next quarter we will make this money. So, and if I don't make this money, I'll be held accountable because I'm a publicly listed company. So what is very critical is that I need to be the first one to communicate the bad news upwards. Don't make the mistake of eschewing news. Number one. Number two, don't make it personal. The classic mistake that people, and this is very typical of India, samajh jayega, right? He will understand, or maybe he will get to know through the grapevine. Communicate directly upwards. And it is critical because there's nothing personal here.
What about the team dynamic? Because if a new manager now has to start delegating or, set a precedent, new, sort of rules or a new playbook in order. So how do I assess or read my team? Who's doing what? Who's good at what to assign to whom? Is there a way to figure that out?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the skill will matrix. I map all my team members. Suppose I have 10 team members. I map all my team members on the skill and the will matrix. And I make the skill and the will public. That's very important. I need to tell people that, hey, in this job, you're not ready yet. That's about it. And I need to display that because you are low on skill or will, I'm willing to invest on you for the next 6 months. I'll give you a 6 months long leash and I'll invest in you. I'll send you to a program in a B school or some online course, or I'll mentor you privately, or I'll get a mentor from outside. 6 months you've got, buddy, to get your act up. And if you don't, then I guess we'll have to relook at the candidature, because many times you need to get the right guy in the right seat. And I have been experiencing myself that the moment I release a person from one role and put him or her to another role, he blossoms. But as a manager, I need to know that who belongs where. A person who is a analytically minded person may not do terribly well in marketing, but in finance he would. And somebody who's artistic might get released from the finance and do wonderfully well in the marketing team. So if I can plot them on skill will, have one-on-one conversations and understand their career aspirations and be flexible.
But typically in a team, it could get tricky to understand what motivates whom, those kind of things, especially if you have inherited a new team. Now, I might be filling in for somebody who moved to another, job or another organization. There could be pushback. There could be maybe the new manager wants to disrupt the status quo, bring in some new change. How do you handle those kind of slightly potentially conflicting or controversial situations, potentially, which could lead to problems?
This requires, often you need to deal with such situations with a heavy hand. When Satya Nadella became the CEO of Microsoft, he was only the third CEO of Microsoft after Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. The first week that Satya Nadella became the CEO, he had to ease out his direct reports in first week alone. People who have been with Microsoft for 20, 25 years, he had to let them go. Which means that if you realize that there is a person who is not fit for a certain role, and if you are in a position of power, you need to tell him or her that I'm giving this time, especially in the inherited team, which he inherited from Steve Ballmer. And he said that, buddy, this is where you stay on this skill will matrix. I'm willing to invest on you, but you please understand that this is costing us. If you don't know how to use power, you are actually in a position to abuse power. You don't deserve to be powerful enough if you don't know how to use that power. So as a manager, you should not act helpless. मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? मुझे तो ऐसे team मिल गई. You can't act like that, because then you are not exercising your power.
But a heavy hand can also be met with more resistance, don't you think?
But if you're objective about it, that you say that, hey, this is where, it's like if I tell you that you need to cut down on sugar, you may argue with me. But if I show you a blood test report, you don't need any convincing. So what people need to be shown is a blood test report. That, hey, this is where you are. somebody who's diabetic, and many times people look at the blood test with so much surprise that I didn't know that I'm borderline cholesterol. So I think people need to be objective, saying that this is where you stand vis-a-vis my expectation and organizational objective. And I'm willing to concede and give you 3 months of investment, but no more. If you're tolerating mediocrity, then it's bad.
But you shouldn't also be at the risk of isolating your work friends, right? You do need people. You do need a life, even at work. Yes, work comes first, but you can't distance suddenly overnight from your colleagues.
Again, the whole idea is about stepping into that role. They need to be communicated in no subtle ways that I'm responsible to lead you. And I would be demanding performance from you. And there might be a situation where I'll be dealing with you in a heavy hand, because I have been annotated this responsibility, but there's no animosity. And increasingly, if you are making your decisions objectively, that, hey, we were having dinner till about last evening and I would still want to have dinner with you. But as far as the office goes, I think we need to sort out things. And if you don't allow that line to be drawn, then believe me, he will never take, or she will never take you seriously. You'll never grow as a human being, let alone as a manager. And then your days are few.
Since we're talking about making that personal transition, how do I manage my workload? Because earlier I had my own schedule. I had my own tasks cut out. Now, as a new manager, I also have to be available for others' grievances or management or my new role and my new work. How do I do that?
So one of the pitfalls that people often fall for as a new manager is an open door policy. People declare that my door is open, you can walk in anytime you like. And I think this is suicidal. Don't have your door open. Because the moment you have your door open, people would not solve their problems at their own level. They'll always walk up to you with their problems, saying that anyway, the door is open, so I can as well go and disturb him. Number two, by your door being open, you are incessantly interrupted by trivial stuff that would never allow you to look at the big picture and operate at a slightly higher level. So you say that I'll meet my employees for just 30 minutes a day. You time box it. For 1 hour a day, I'll think of strategic issues. For 15 minutes a day, I'll just ensure that I am looking at reading. I'll just do 2 meetings a day. And as somebody like Jeff Bezos very famously says that he does only 3 meetings a day. And he says that in every meeting, he ensures that he finishes his 3 meetings by lunch. 3 meetings a day. And he says that I'm paying my leaders so much to take less number of high quality decisions, not lot of low quality decisions. Push decision making down, which are not make or break for the company. So I think keep your door closed. Let people work on what they're getting paid for. Time box it, saying that I'm available only between this and this time. Come to me with problems, but also with the solutions. And then I am bucketing my 1 hour time for strategic considerations. If you don't think about the future won't happen.
As a new manager, one has to evaluate their team, but they should also not lose sight of where they're headed.
Yeah, totally.
So maybe they do a 90-day check or a 6-month check as to how they are performing as a manager, whether they're on track or not. Now, how can they evaluate or assess that?
It's a very good question. So the 60, 30, 60, 90-day plan that people have is typically at the start of the job.
Yeah.
They don't do it incessantly. So what is a very good strategy is to start writing down and have your thinking or the consideration time. Half an hour a day, if you can give yourself, you should be the first one to block your calendar instead of jostling the time on your own time. First one to block your calendar and write things down. Journaling is very useful. Having a reference point of people outside the industry, seeking mentoring or coaching from outside is very useful. And ensuring that while I was at the office, how did I grow? I allowed the team to grow. How did I grow as an individual? That is very critical. So
but how do I know whether I'm on the right track?
Having a reference point. If you can have a reference point of people from outside the industry, some peer or your past self or your friend who is in a different context, and you are able to ensure and keep a track. And a very good example is that, is my vocabulary changing? As a leader, there are 2 input channels, there are 2 output channels. Input channels are listening and reading. Output channels are writing and speaking. If I'm not having very powerful input channels, if I'm not listening different stuff and well, if I'm not reading different stuff and well, I'll be predictable in the outcome. So the moment I open my mouth, my guys know that, this is what he's going to say. So they'll start rolling their eyes, which means I need to listen from different channels, read different works, so that whenever I speak new stuff. So if I'm repeating myself, I know that I'm stagnating. If my style is the same for addressing a problem, I know I'm stagnating. So that's the check.
And what does success look like after the end of my first year as a new manager? How do I know that, okay, great, I'm doing okay, I'm on track and things are looking good and steady?
If I can take a vacation.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, that is the merit. If I can take a vacation at the end of 1 month without being bothered on the call, that's a great litmus test that I've managed my team very well. I've seen people who can't even go to an ICU without their phones being buzzed. Which means for every nook and corner, they need them to have the rubber stamp. Everything should flow through them. And that's where the whole thing collapses. If I can take a 1 week or 2 week vacation after a years of hiatus, I think that's a great indicator that I have my team in order. They can run the show. And then one day I can raise my hand and saying that I'm good for promotion. because the team is good to show up. If I'm involved on a day-to-day basis, I'll not get promoted. So that's a litmus test.
All right. Great chatting with you and getting so many practical examples, practical insights on, preparing the new managers who are now stepping into a new role. So great having you on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
With that, we come to the close of yet another episode of Workwise with Naukri. I hope you guys can make use of all the insights and inputs to survive and thrive in your first year as a manager. With that, it's a wrap, and thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Workwise with Naukri for more such exciting content.